norms through cultural evolution has shaped our species' genetic evolution and our sociality. So one idea is that the threat of reputational damage and other kinds of costly punishment to norm violators has initiated a process of self-domestication. So this suggests that there's a syndrome that we share with other species like domesticated dogs, um, whereby selection favors certain genes and their downstream hormonal and psychological effects that create a domestication-like effect. We have many of these, but not all of these when you compare us with other species. One of the key elements is what Richard Wrangham calls reduced reactive aggression, a kind of general docility. This would also favor the kind of norm psychology I discussed on the previous slide, this readiness to acquire and internalize social rules. It may even lead to pro-social biases, these biases that we get to acquiring pro-social norms, which would have resulted, because of the effects of intergroup competition, favoring more group beneficial norms. Complex tools and technologies over time. So that's the crossing of the Rubicon. You get some cultural evolution going. Culture begins to become a semi-independent inheritance system alongside genetic evolution. Early cultural evolution may have produced things like stone tools for cutting and processing food. Fire and cooking may have created a kind of externalized digestion, which weakened the selection pressures, allowing our stomachs to shrink, changing other aspects of our physiology. This would have freed up more energy to build larger brains, giving us greater dexterity for using tools and making tools. This then would have created a greater selection pressure for brains able to acquire, organize, store, and retransmit cultural information, because that's the name of the game. Cultural evolution then could have produced more knowledge about throwing techniques, about how to find tubers, about how to make water containers. Water containers would have opened the door for long distance running, which would have created genetic selection pressures for our springy arches, our long legs. Eventually, we might have gotten shortened colons, having to do with the fire and cooking I mentioned, and even larger brains, because now there's this growing body of valuable behavioral information that's only available if you're a good cultural learner, and you've got to acquire it and store it, and eventually retransmit it. You get cold weather clothing. Better tools allow us to have thinner bones and weaker muscles because we're relying more on technology. Things like resins and other kinds of projectiles can emerge. And then eventually a cognition that allows us to acquire and store all this knowledge about different kinds of plants and animals, because we're now in the cognitive niche or the cultural niche, and minds that are better able to acquire information about artifacts. And eventually this can affect human life history, can make us an extended juvenile period, a longer post-reproductive period, because as you extend life, older individuals have an opportunity to retransmit back to younger generations this large body of information they've accumulated.